Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nashtapraya Shravadreshu Nityam Bhakti Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Ter Bhavati Naishtiki. So continuing with the discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 1, the history of the life of Ajamila, text number 16 onwards. So yesterday we studied how Shukdev Goswami is speaking and he was glorifying bhakti and how even by abhas of rupa, abhas rupa bhakti, abhas means a glimpse of bhakti, all the sinful life, all the fog of sinful life is immediately vanquished. All the reactions of sinful life are gone. So he further speaks, Na tatha hi agvan rajan puye tap adibhi yatha krishna arpita pranas tat purush nishevaya. My dear king, if a sinful person engages in the service of a bona fide devotee of the Lord and thus learns how to dedicate his life unto the lotus feet of Krishna, he can be completely purified. One cannot be purified merely by undergoing austerity, penance, brahmacharya, and other methods of atonement I have previously described. So even Shukdev Goswami is saying all of the processes of atonement, they cannot remove, they cannot purify a person completely as much as bhakti can. Tattva Purusha refers to a preacher of Krishna consciousness, such as the spiritual master. Srila Narottam Das Thakur has said, Chadiya Vaishnav Seva Nistar Bhaichake. Without serving a bona fide spiritual master, an ideal Vaishnav, who can be delivered from the clutches of Maya? This idea is also expressed in many other places. Srimad Bhagavatam says, Mahadvaram Ahur Vimukti. If one desires liberation from the clutches of Maya, one must associate with a pure devotee. Mahatma. A Mahatma is one who engages 24 hours daily in the loving service of the Lord. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Mahatmanas tu mam partha. O son of Pritha, those who are not deluded, the great souls, are under the protection of the divine nature. Devim Prakritim Ashvita. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible. Thus, the symptom of a Mahatma is that he has no engagement other than service to Krishna. One must render service to a Vaishnava in order to get freed from sinful reactions, revive one's original Krishna consciousness, and be trained in how to love Krishna. This is the result of Mahatma Seva. Of course, if one engages in the service of a pure devotee, the reactions of one's sinful life are vanquished automatically. Devotional service is necessary not to drive away an insignificant stock of sins, but to awaken our dormant love for Krishna. As fog is vanquished at the first glimpse of sunlight, one's sinful reactions are automatically vanquished as soon as one begins serving a pure devotee. No separate endeavor is required. So sinful reactions are automatically vanquished as soon as one starts doing bhakti. But as Prabhupada says, the devotional service is not to drive away an insignificant stock of sins, but to awaken our dormant love for Krishna. So that is a real purpose of bhakti. The word Krishna Arpita Prana refers to a devotee who dedicates his life to serving Krishna, not to being saved from the path to hellish life. A devotee is Narayan Parayana or Vasudeva Parayana, which means that the path of Vasudeva or the devotional path is his life and soul. Narayana Para Sarve na Kutashan Bibhyati. Such a devotee is not afraid of going anywhere. There is a path toward liberation in the higher planetary systems, and a path towards the hellish planets. But a Narayanapara devotee is unafraid wherever he is sent. He simply wants to remember Krishna wherever he may be. Such a devotee is unconcerned with hell and heaven. He is simply attached to rendering service to Krishna. When a devotee is put into hellish conditions, he accepts them as Krishna's mercy. Tatyana kambam susamikshmana. He does not protest, oh, I'm such a great devotee of Krishna. Why have I been put into this misery? Instead, he thinks this is Krishna's mercy. Such an attitude is possible for a devotee who engages in the service of Krishna's representative. This is the secret of success. So Shukdev Goswami told him, my dear king, if a sinful person engages in the service of a bona fide devotee of the Lord, then he can be completely purified. So this is the secret of success. This is the real success. And like Prabhupada said towards the last line, he doesn't care whether he's put in hellish planet or anywhere else. He just accepts them as Krishna's mercy. But to come to that level of surrender and full faith in Krishna, one needs to do plenty of service to the devotee and get his mercy to come to that level. And using bhakti just to drive away sinful reactions is like somebody explained once in a lecture, is like to kill cockroach if one uses a missile. Missile can do much bigger things than just killing a cockroach. So bhakti is much more than just to remove the sinful reactions. It basically removes the propensity even to commit sin and goes much beyond. To give love for Krishna, and especially when love for Krishna is there, they definitely cannot have any sinful desires. Sagri chino hi ayam loke pantha kshemo akuto bhaya sushila sadho yatra narayana parayana. The path followed by pure devotees who are well behaved and fully endowed with the best qualifications is certainly the most auspicious path in this material world. It is free from fear and it is authorized by the Shastras. One should not think that the person who takes to bhakti is one who cannot perform the ritualistic ceremonies recommended in the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas, or is not sufficiently educated to speculate on spiritual subjects. Mayavadis generally allege that the bhakti path is for women and illiterates. This is a groundless accusation. The bhakti path is followed by the most learned scholars, such as the Goswamis, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Ramanujacharya. And why Ramanujacharya? Madhvacharya, Vishnu Swami, all these wonderful acharyas, they have followed the path of bhakti. These are the actual followers of the bhakti path. Regardless of whether or not one is educated or aristocratic, one must follow in their footsteps. Mahajano yena gata sapanta. One must follow the path of the Mahajans. The Mahajans are those who have taken to the path of devotional service. For these great personalities are the perfect persons. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, yasyasti bhaktir bhagavati kinchana. One who has unflinching devotion to the Supreme Personality of Godhead has all the good qualities of the demigods. The less intelligent, however, misunderstand the bhakti path and therefore allege that it is for one who cannot execute ritualistic ceremonies or speculate. As confirmed here by the word Sadrichina, bhakti is the path that is appropriate, not the paths of Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda. Mayavadis may be Sushila Sadhva, very well behaved, saintly persons, but there is nevertheless some doubt about whether they are actually making progress, for they have not accepted the path of bhakti. On the other hand, those who follow the path of the acharyas are Sushila and Sadhva, but furthermore, their path is Akuto Bhaya, which means free from fear. One should fearlessly follow the 12 Mahajans and the line of disciplic succession, and thus be liberated from the clutches of Maya. So this way one can make progress in bhakti by following the path of these sadhvas, the devotees, the Mahajans. Other paths, like Prabhupada said, Mayavadis may be Sushila Sadhva, well-behaved saintly persons. And there are many. But there is a doubt if they're making actual progress. Actual progress is how we make progress on the spiritual path. Qualities are good, but are we making progress? And another drawback with Karma Kanda and Gyan Kanda is one makes progress based on one's own capabilities or strength. In bhakti, one makes progress by the mercy of the devotees, by mercy of Krishna. Big difference. Big difference. Prayashchittani chirnani narayana parangamukham nanishpunanti rajendra sura kumbham ivapagaha. My dear king, as a pot containing liquor cannot be purified, even if washed in the waters of many rivers. Non-devotees cannot be purified by the processes of atonement, even if they perform them very well. To take advantage of the methods of atonement, one must be at least somewhat devoted. Otherwise, there is no chance of one's being purified. It is clear from this verse that even those who take advantage of Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda, but are not at least slightly devoted, cannot be purified simply by following these other paths. The word Prayashchittani is plural in number to indicate both Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda. Narottam Das Thakur therefore says, Karma Kanda, Jnana Kanda, Kevala Vishera Bhana. Thus, Narottam Das Thakur compares the paths of Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda to parts of poison. Liquor and poison are in the same category. According to this verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, a person who has heard a good deal about the path of devotion service, but who is not attached to it, who is not Krishna conscious, is like a pot of liquor. Such a person cannot be purified without at least a slight touch of devotional service. So this pot of liquor, Shukdev Goswami is giving this example for us to understand this pot of liquor. I mean, the liquor is so bad. Normally, any pot we can clean, if not by anything else, then at least by cow dung and cow urine. Cow urine will purify it. But the pot, if it has contained liquor at any time, even cow urine or cow dung cannot purify it. One has to throw it away. It is so bad. So here, Prabhupada is comparing part of liquor to the heart of a person who wants to do atonement, but he does atonement, but the sinful propensities are not gone. So until he adds, as Prabhupada adds a slight touch of devotional service to his atonement, he cannot be purified. Sakrin mana Krishna padaravindayor niveshitam tad gunaragi yarihi nate yamam pashabhritascha tad bhatan swapne api pashyanti chirna nishkrita. Although not having fully realized Krishna, persons who have even once surrendered completely unto his lotus feet, and who have become attracted to his name, form, qualities, and pastimes are completely freed of all sinful reactions, for they have accepted the true method of atonement. Even in dreams, even in dreams, such surrendered souls do not see Yamaraj or his order carriers, who are equipped with ropes to bind the sinful. See, this is the power of bhakti. Even they have done once surrendered completely unto his lotus feet. So even in their dreams, they will not see Yamaraj or his carriers, outer carriers. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Sarva Dharmana Parityaja, abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. This same principle is described here. Sakrin Manaha Krishna Padada Vindaya. If by studying Bhagavad Gita one decides to surrender to Krishna, he is immediately freed from all sinful reactions. See, Prabhupada, the wonderful line he has written. If by studying Bhagavad Gita or any other literature, one decides to surrender to Krishna, he hasn't surrendered. He just decided. He is immediately freed from all sinful reactions. This is the potency of bhakti and mercy of Krishna. It's also significant that Shukdev Goswami, having several times repeated the words Vasudeva Parayana and Narayana Parayana, finally says Krishna Padara Vendayo. Thus he indicates that Krishna is the origin of both Narayan and Vasudeva. Even though Narayana and Vasudeva are not different from Krishna, simply by surrendering to Krishna, one fully surrenders to all his expansions such as Narayan, Vasudeva and Govinda. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Matta Paratram Nanyat. There is no truth superior to me. There are many names and forms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but Krishna is a supreme form. Krishna stu Bhagwan Swayam. Therefore, Krishna recommends to neophyte devotees that one should surrender unto him only, Mam Ekam. Because neophyte devotees cannot understand what the forms of Narayan, Vasudeva and Govinda are, Krishna directly says, Mam Ekam. Herein, this is also supported by the words Krishna Padara Vendayo. Narayan does not speak personally, but Krishna or Vasudeva does, as in Bhagavad Gita, for example. Therefore, to follow the direction of Bhagavad Gita means to surrender unto Krishna. And to surrender in this way is the highest perfection of Bhakti Yoga. So here Shukdev Goswami clearly said, Krishna Padara Vindyo, Sakrina Manaha, Krishna Padara Vindyo. So just surrender unto the lotus feet of Krishna. So means Narayan, Vasudeva, and all of the expansions, incarnations, everybody is included in Krishna. Parikshit Maharaj had inquired from Shukdev Goswami how one can be saved from falling into the various conditions of hellish life. In this verse, Shukdev Goswami answers that a soul who has surrendered to Krishna certainly cannot go to Nark, hellish existence. To say nothing of going there, even in his dreams, he does not see Yamaraj or his order carriers who are able to take one there. In other words, if one wants to save himself from falling into Narak, hellish life, he should fully surrender to Krishna. The word Sakrit is significant because it indicates that if one sincerely surrenders to Krishna once, he is saved even by chance he falls down by committing sinful activities. So even if he falls down by committing sinful activities, he is still saved by Krishna. Therefore, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Api chet sudracharu. Even if one commits the most abominable actions, if he is engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated. If one never for a moment forgets Krishna, he is saved even if by chance he falls down by committing sinful acts. So this is, so other processes, they cannot give this kind of assurance. Only bhakti can. If one never for a moment forgets Krishna, he is safe even by chance he falls down by committing sinful acts. In the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna also says, Neha Vikram Nashvasti. In this endeavor, there is no loss or diminution, and a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. Elsewhere in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Nahi kalyana krita kasyad durgatim tata gacchati. One who performs auspicious activities never overcome by evil. The highest kalyana auspicious activity is to surrender to Krishna. That is the only path by which to save oneself from falling down into hellish life. Srila Prabodhanand Saraswati has confirmed this as follows. Kavalyam narakayate. The sinful actions of one who has surrendered unto Krishna are compared to a snake with its poison fangs removed. Such a snake is no longer to be feared. Of course, one should not commit sinful activities on the strength of having surrendered to Krishna. However, even if one who has surrendered to Krishna happens to do something sinful because of his former habits, such sinful actions no longer have a destructive effect. Therefore, one should adhere to the lotus feet of Krishna very tightly and serve him under the direction of the spiritual master. Thus, in all conditions, one will be akuto bhaya, free from fear. See, very, very bold statements Prabhupada is making here. But sometimes we see devotees are suffering, even in this life. So it definitely they're not suffering for their sinful reactions. So some place, I don't know if Prabhupada has explained it or some other devotees explained it. It's like devotees suffering is like if a jailer or some jail authorities beat up a prisoner while taking him out of the prison cell. They can beat up. So that for a devotee, the suffering is like that. He's been taken out, but if he says no, I don't want to get out, they can beat him up. No, you get out of it. For karmis or for other sinful people, criminals, their suffering is like when they are inside the prison house or when they are being brought to the prison house and they're being beaten up. So both ways we see, they both are getting beaten up, but there's a difference. Or another example is given, if a cat catches a mouse in her teeth, so those teeth, those jaws of cat are like death personified for the mouse. But if she catches her kitten in her teeth, same mouth, same cat, but kitten will be sitting there very comfortably because he knows I'm in the mouth of my mother. So that is the difference between a devotee taking shelter or devotee getting devotee suffering and a criminal or karmi suffering. There's a huge difference. And regarding going to Narak Lok, yes, devotee doesn't go to Narak for their own sinful reactions. But Yudhishthira Maharaj went to Narak. even if he went just there for a moment, what had happened during the war of Mahabharata, when Dronacharya was supposed to be killed, and Krishna told Yudhishthira Maharaj, you tell a lie. You tell Dronacharya that Ashwatthama got killed. And Yudhishthira Maharaj hesitated for telling a lie because he had never spoken a lie. Just see the situation here. Krishna says Dronacharya will believe you if you tell him Ashwatthama got killed. Bhima killed Ashwatthama. Even Krishna himself could have said the same thing, but Dronacharya wouldn't have accepted it. This is a reputation of Krishna, actually. No, because Krishna had different roles to perform to protect his devotees. But Yudhishthira Maharaj, his reputation was so that he had never spoken a lie and never even thought of any sinful activity. Forget about committing any sinful act. Never even thought of sinful activity. So Yudhishthira Maharaj hesitated. But then he spoke that the elephant named Ashwatthama got killed. But when he was going to say elephant, then Krishna blew the conch shell. So Dronacharya never heard the word elephant. So anyway, so for that sin, so not for telling a lie. The sin was not in telling the lie, because Krishna told him to tell the lie. The sin was not following the orders of Krishna. So for that sin, just for a moment, he had to go to hell. Not for suffering also, because he is such a devotee of Krishna. It was him going to hell was to give the momentary association to the people suffering in hell, so that they realize that there is more to life than to suffer here or to try to enjoy some bodily concept of life. So this is how powerful a devotee is. Even Janak Maharaj is considered in Bhagavad Gita that he is considered to be like a Mahajan, that he was an example. Even he desired to go to hell. Janak Maharaj, father of Mother Sita, he desired to go to hell so that he can give association to those people who are suffering. So the devotees, that's why it is said, they don't go to hell. Even in their dreams, they don't see Yamdutas. Also, it is said, some time back, we had posted something about Tulsi Maharani. So anybody who's wearing this Kanti Mala of Tulsi Maharani, the Yamdutas don't come close to him when he leaves the body, even if he is sinful. That's how powerful Tulsi Maharani is. So, and also it is said, even if somebody who dies, he was not a devotee, very, very sinful person, and you place Tulsi Maharani, Tulsi Kanti Mala on him, or Tulsi leaf on him, or Tulsi stick on his body when you're cremating the body, he can go back home, back to Godhead, or he can get a wonderful devotional life next life because of the touch of Tulsi Maharani. In fact, there is a story in the Puranas. There was one very sinful person, and he was walking, and the Yamdutas came to take him. But somehow Yamdutas came little early before he was scheduled to go. Yamdutas also material people, they can make mistakes. So they came early, and this person had the vision of Yamdutas. And Yamdutas are not very good looking people. We'll read about them a little bit later in the story of Ajamil. And he heard them talking that what kind of sinful person is this guy, and we're going to take him, and he's going to suffer in this hell or that hell. And only if he had taken shelter of Tulsi Maharani, there's so much of Tulsi around here, and he's so sinful, he doesn't even go near Tulsi, even he has never even watered Tulsi Maharani. And somehow this person who was sinful and he was about to die, he heard this conversation. And he just went to Tulsi Maharani and just either he held on to Tulsi Maharani, or he found a Kanti Mala, he wore it, or something he did. He touched Tulsi Maharani. And Yamdutas went back. They said, we cannot take him. He's not in our jurisdiction anymore. So next, somehow he got extension of life, and next day he was wearing Tulsi Kanti Mala. And his friend asked him, what happened? How come you're wearing Tulsi Kanti Mala? And he told the story. And then he led a proper life. So this is the advantage. This is the benefit of coming in contact with devotee and taking up the process of bhakti. Just a thought, just a thought of, yes, I will take up the process. Even that is good enough for Krishna to give us his mercy. Not just that, that we'll read in 7th canto. Not just that a person who's performing devotion service or little bit devotion service, he gets a mercy. His relatives, in case of Prahlad Maharaj, 21 generations, it is mentioned. But in our case, we hardly can do any bhakti. But Krishna gets so grateful to the family we are born in. So 3 generations, at least 3 generations, he gives us mercy to. That they also can come on the path of devotion service very fast, very soon. So plenty of mercy for a devotee and for his relatives. And what to speak of if the devotee is preaching and he is bringing more and more people on this path? What to speak of that kind of devotee? Krishna gets so grateful to that devotee. So Shukdev Goswami further speaks. Atra cha udaharantam imam itihasam puratanam dutanam Vishnu yamayo samvadastam nibodhame. So now he is coming to the story of Ajamil. In this regard, learned scholars and saintly persons describe a very old historical incident involving a discussion between the order carriers of Lord Vishnu and those of Yamaraj. Please hear of this from me. The Puranas or old histories are sometimes neglected by unintelligent men who consider their descriptions mythological. Actually, the descriptions of the Puranas or the old histories of the universe are factual, although not chronological. They're not in any particular time frame. The Puranas record the chief incidents that have occurred over many millions of years, not only on this planet, but also on other planets within the universe. Therefore, all learned and realized Vedic scholars speak with reference to the incidents in the Puranas. Srila Rupa Goswami accepts the Puranas to be as important as the Vedas themselves. Therefore, in Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu, he quotes the following words from Brahma Yamal, Shruti Smriti Puranadi, Pancharatrim Vidibhina. Devotional service of the Lord that ignores the authorized Vedic literatures like the Upanishads, Puranas, and Narad Pancharatra is simply an unnecessary disturbance in society. A devotee of Krishna must refer not only to the Vedas but also to the Puranas. One should not foolishly consider the Puranas mythological. If they were mythological, Shukdev Goswami would not have taken the trouble to recite the old historical incidents concerning the life of Ajamil. Now the history begins as follows. So Ajamil, the story was in Kali Yuga, some other Kali Yuga, some other place, nobody knows. So Shukdev Goswami just said, okay, in the Puranas there is a story. So Puranas and many scholars, they just neglect Puranas. Puranas, they say, oh, there's a bunch of stories. Even Srimad Bhagavatam is a Purana, Amala Puranam. We cannot neglect Srimad Bhagavatam. They just give, all these scholars give more attention to Upanishads and the Vedas and the Vedanta Sutras and other things, not to Puranas. But Puranas, they have plenty of stories for us to learn from. And Srimad Bhagavatam that we are studying is a Purana, a wonderful Purana. So he's starting to tell the story of Ajamil. Kanya Kubje Dvija Kashid Asi Patir Ajamilaha Namna Nashta Sadacharo Dasya Sansarga Dushitaha. In the city known as Kanya Kubj, there was a Brahman named Ajamil who married a prostitute maid servant and lost all his Brahminical qualities because of the association of that low-class woman. So Kanya Kubj, I think it's a modern city named Kanpur. It's known as Kanya Kubj, or it is Kannauj. I don't remember. But either of the two. But this story is not from this Kali Yuga, it's from some other Kali Yuga. Purport. The fault of illicit connection with women is that it makes one lose all Brahminical qualities. In India, there is still a class of servants called Shudras, whose maid servant wives are called Shudranis. Sometimes people who are very lusty establish relationships with such maid servants and sweeping women, since in the higher statuses of society, they cannot indulge in the habit of women hunting, which is strictly prohibited by social convention. Ajamil, a qualified Brahmin youth, lost all his Brahminical qualities because of his association with a prostitute, but he was ultimately saved because he had begun the process of Bhakti Yoga. Therefore, in the previous verse, Shukdev Goswami spoke of the person who has only once surrendered himself at the lotus feet of Lord. Mana Krishna Padaravindayo. Or has just begun the Bhakti Yoga process. Bhakti Yoga begins with Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, hearing and chanting of Lord Vishnu's names. As in the Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Chanting is the beginning of Bhakti Yoga. Therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu declares, Hare Ranam, Hare Ranam, Hare Ranam Eva Kevalam. In this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, the only means of deliverance is chanting the holy name of the Lord. There is no other way, there is no other way, there is no other way. The process of chanting the holy name of the Lord is always superbly effective, but it is especially effective in this age of Kali. Its practical effectiveness will now be explained by Shukdev Goswami through the history of Ajamil, who was freed from the hands of the Yamaduta simply because of chanting the holy name of Narayana. Parikshit Maharaj's original question was how to be freed from falling down into hell or into the hands of the Yamdutas. In reply, Shukdev Goswami is citing this old historical example to convince Parikshit Maharaj of the potency of Bhakti Yoga, which begins simply with the chanting of the Lord's name. All the great authorities of Bhakti Yoga recommend the devotion process beginning with the chanting of the holy name of Krishna. Tan Nama Grahana Adibhi. So this boy Ajamil, he was a nice Brahmin boy, but somehow he came in contact with this prostitute and he got attracted to her, and established lusty relationship with this prostitute. Just on the humorous side, that's why his name was Ajamil, because he used to tell that prostitute, Aja Mil, Aja Mil. So his name was Ajamil, but now that wasn't the reason. So that was that Kali Yuga. So even now in this Kali Yuga, in India, in our great land of India, land of Dharma, India, Bharatvarsh, now the court has given a ruling, Supreme Court of India. I don't know how long ago, but I have heard they have given a ruling that having extramarital affairs is not illegal. It's completely legal. Man can have and women can have, because they both are adults and they can have. So many Ajamils are being produced now in India. But they're not performing Bhakti Yoga. That's a problem. Bandhyaksha Katavash Garhitam Vrittim Asita Bibhrat Kutumbam Ashuchir Yatayamas Dehina. This fallen Brahman, Ajamil, gave trouble to others by arresting them, by cheating them in gambling, or by directly plundering them. This was the way he earned his livelihood and maintained his wife and children. Oh, I thought there would be more details. I didn't know that. So what had happened, maybe later on Prabhupada will give more details. No. Ajamil, he was a nice Brahmin boy, and his father was going to perform some yagya, and he asked Ajamil to go to forest and get some wood for the yagya. So Ajamil went to the forest, and while on the way back, he saw on the roadside this prostitute. Her name is not mentioned anywhere. This prostitute was kissing her lover. And in the process, her clothes were not, she was not properly dressed with the clothes. So Ajamil just looked at her like this, doing in this kind of activity, and he kept walking. But his mind got bewildered. He kept on thinking about that prostitute, kept on thinking how he could also enjoy the same way with the prostitute, and he came home. After a while, although he was married and he had a beautiful wife, very chaste wife, he was married, but somehow he could not get that prostitute out of his mind. And then he approached her. He brought her home, and as the prostitute, she had her so many demands. And to fulfill her demands, first he kicked his father and mother out, who were the Brahmins, old people. Then he kicked his lawfully wedded wife also out of the house. And then again, the prostitute, she wanted so much of money to fulfill all her needs. He was doing so many sinful activities. Here, Prabhupada, here it is said, he gave trouble to others by arresting them, by cheating them in gambling, or by directly plundering them. And he was doing all this uh, cheating business just to satisfy the prostitute. He gave up all his Brahminical tendencies completely. And he was stealing, he was kidnapping people, he was cheating them in terms of um, giving them some land and taking money, and the land didn't belong to him. All the things he was doing. And for what? Just to keep that prostitute happy. And it is mentioned that he had, it says, this was the way he earned his livelihood and maintained his wife and children. And even that wasn't sure if the children were his, because she was a prostitute. This verse indicates how degraded one becomes simply by indulging in illicit sex with a prostitute. Illicit sex, is not possible with the chaste or aristocratic women, but only with unchaste Shudras. The more society allows prostitution and illicit sex, the more impetus it gives to cheaters, thieves, plunderers, drunkards, and gamblers. Therefore, we must advise all the disciples in our Krishna consciousness movement to avoid illicit sex, which is the beginning of all abominable life and which is followed by meat eating, gambling, and intoxication, one after another. Of course, restraint is very difficult, but it is quite possible if one fully surrenders to Krishna, since all these abominable habits gradually become distasteful for a Krishna conscious person. If illicit sex is allowed to increase in a society, however, the entire society will be condemned, for it will be full of rogues, thieves, cheaters, and so forth. And exactly this is what is happening in the society. In India, in America, Russia, everywhere, this is what is happening. And Ajamil only saw one prostitute on the roadside kissing her lover or boyfriend. Here we have access to all these things on our smartphones, or laptops, movies, TV, newspaper. I mean, at least here in America, the newspapers are still very much okay. In India, the newspapers, the advertisements in those newspapers, it's not even worth getting the newspaper these days. And the magazines you see, and the magazines which has this kind of articles or pictures, those magazines, they print those pictures and magazines on such wonderful paper, glossy paper. I mean, our Bhagavad Gita paper is nowhere near compared to that paper that they use for those magazines, giving all sorts of rubbish things. And we cannot print our Bhagavad Gita on that kind of paper, but they do that. And to promote what? Just some rubbish. And this leads to so many crimes in the city. Rapes are happening, kidnappings are happening, murders. And this all because of allowing this prostitution and illicit sex. And at the same time, what the government can do? Government is from people. We choose from that kind of society, first of all. And what can they do? Nothing. The society has become like that. एवं निवस्तस्य लालयान्यस्य तत्सुतान् कालो अति अगान्नः राजन् नष्टाशीति ayusha samaha. My dear king, while he thus spent his time in abominable, sinful activities to maintain his family of many sons, 88 years of his life passed by. 88 years. He just lived like that. Tasya pravayasah putra dasha tesham tu yo avama balo narayano namna pitroscha daito bhrisham. That old man Ajamil had 10 sons, of whom the youngest was a baby named Narayan. Since Narayan was the youngest of all the sons, he was naturally very dear to both his father and his mother. The word Pravayasha indicates Ajamil's sinfulness because although he was 88 years old, he had a very young child. According to Vedic culture, one should leave home as soon as he had reached 50 years of age. One should not live at home and go on producing children. Sex life is allowed for 25 years between the ages of 25 and 45, or at the most 50. After that, one should give up the habit of sex life and leave home as vanaprastha and then properly take sannyas. Ajamil, however, because of his association with the prostitute, lost all Brahminical culture and became most sinful even in his so-called household life. So actually what had happened, some other Purana it is mentioned this story in detail. So when Ajamil had these babies, and when this boy Narayan was born, he was not even named yet. So some sadhus had come to the village. And because of Ajamil's bhakti that he had done when he was young, he still had some of those qualities, and he invited those sadhus to come to his house for prasadam. So when they came, him and his prostitute wife served them nicely, fed them prasadam, and then it was too late at night to go anywhere, so they decided to take rest at Ajamil's house. But at night, because first of all, the food was cooked by a prostitute, and then the money which was used to buy that food, the grains, was all sinful. The sadhus had terrible dreams at night. So when they got up, they were like, what did happen? How did that happen? And then they asked Ajamil who he was, and what does he do, and this and that. So Ajamil could not lie to them, so he told them this truth. And then the sadhus understood why we had those dreams. So they, but sadhus are full of compassion. So what they said, that this baby of yours, just name him Narayan. So following the advice of those sadhus, Ajamil named the youngest baby as Narayan. And naturally, he was very attached to Narayan because he was the youngest, and Ajamil was 88 years old. So he was very attached, and he would, whenever he would take care of the baby, or he was in the house, Narayan, come here, Narayan, go there, Narayan, have you eaten? Narayan, have you take your sleep, go to sleep now, Narayan, do this, Narayan, do that. And he was all the time saying the name of Narayan. So this is what happens when we associate with sadhus, even momentary association. can change our life. So anyway, we'll continue with the story tomorrow. We'll stop here. See anybody has any questions or comments.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, there is a very beautiful story here in Ayodhya about Kanikubji and Sariparin Brahmins. So, like we are Sariparin Brahmins, so we don't get married to any Kanikubji Brahmin.
Okay.
A very ancient story is on Sri Ramchandra. When he killed Ravan, Ravan was a half Brahmin person. He is like, his dad was a Brahmin, so he was a Brahmin. So what happened? The social contractors, or what we call Samaj ke Thekedar, they have said ki Sri Ramchandra ji has done a Brahma Hatya. So because of that, there are two sections like Kanikubja and Sariparin who have been invited by Sri Ramchandra for a Brahma Bhoj, so that everybody should, just be peaceful and should not fight for it. That Lord Ramchandra, because Lord Ramchandra was from from a Kshatri community, so that's the very reason this Brahma Bhoj was organized. But the Kanikuj section of Brahmins have boycotted this. They were angry because he killed one Brahmin called Ravan, and that's the very reason. And Sariparin Brahmins, they have attended this invitation, and from there this division happened. Like the marriage does not happen between Kanikubs and Sariparin Brahmins, but it still happens. I mean, it's just a myth in the ancient time. अभी तो होता है, ऐसा नहीं है.
No, well. Yeah, but Kanikubj is Kannauj, not Kanpur,
Yes.
right?
Kannauj, yeah.
Okay, it's Kannauj. Okay.
So this is what the story is.
Thank you, Prabhu. Any other question or comment? Okay, so we can stop here. You all have a great and wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Ram.
Hare Krishna.